Welcome to Fox 55's Green and Gold Gridiron.
The Super Bowl is a little less than a week away, but we know that for Packers fans, it still hurts to talk about the way that Green Bay season ended. But we're going to talk about some big offseason decisions that are awaiting the Packers coming up in just a few weeks or so. As always, as the host of Fox 55's Green and Gold Gridiron, I'm Brian Groff, alongside former Packers and Badgers offensive lineman Bill Ferrario.
Brian, great to still be here talking Packers, talking football. It does still hurt. I know I'm starting to get over it a little bit, but there still is that little bit of pain, and it's going to take a little while to go away. But hopefully looking forward to an exciting Super Bowl, and that'll help the pain go away and look at that offseason.
You are not the only former Badger and Packer who will be on the show tonight. We have another one, and we'll introduce you to him coming up in just a bit. We also have Keith Rording from PackerReport.com. Bill, first for you, as a former professional athlete, tell me about how a team goes about digesting, like the Packers have to do, that loss, learning from it, and moving on.
I think the biggest thing is to be able to step away from the game, just get out of Green Bay, go spend time with your family, get on a vacation, just try the best you can to forget about it right now. And how much ever time that is per player, you take that time, you come back, you start from scratch, you start with your off-season program, lifting, running, getting back into films, and looking forward to your mini camps and OTAs. Start making the corrections and start building that 2015 team.
We know we wanted to see the Packers in Arizona. They didn't make it for the Super Bowl, but several Packers did go for the Pro Bowl, and a couple of standouts in that game from the Green Bay Packers. And here's a look at that from Arizona. Jordy Nelson with a touchdown catch from Drew Brees.
It was nice to see Jordy Nelson do what he does, catching touchdown passes. It was excellent to see Clay Matthews and Jordy Nelson celebrate there. A rare occurrence, but something fun to see during that game.
So the celebration with the guy on the other team. But yes, they are the team, the blood is thicker than the water.
Absolutely. There's still that G on the helmet there.
How about John Kuhn, the fullback, leading the way for his team in rushing?
I'll tell you what, it was exciting watching John Kuhn's run. You know, we know him in Green Bay as a phenomenal blocker, but you give him that ball and that opportunity to run, and he showed what he could do.
That was a 29-yard run. He had 31 total, leading the way for Team Chris Carter. And then J.J. Watt, speaking of former Badgers, what a game he had.
I'll tell you what,
MVP.
He is one guy in that Pro Bowl. If I was an offensive line, I would not want to go up against him. You know, most guys are easing into that tempo where he just came out a million miles an hour and went all game long going hard like that. I'm sure Joe Thomas had some words for him, another former Badger.
So he doesn't understand that in a Pro Bowl you're supposed to take it easy?
I guess he doesn't. He came out there, he set the tempo, and they wanted that tempo picked up. He picked it up.
Let's put the focus on the Packers in their offseason and some devastating news for the McCarthy family with Mike McCarthy's brother, a 47-year-old, dying just within days after that playoff loss. How do you think he focuses and how do they work on handling that difficult time?
I think it's tough. You know, obviously it's tough for anybody to have a loss like that in the family. You know, and I don't know if coaches handle it different, but I think that with their regimented lifestyle, I think he's going to take his time to spend with his family and grieve. And then if football's still on his mind, which I'm assuming it still will be, when that time comes, he'll come back at it and be back 100%.
Packers have a lot of questions as we go into the offseason, a couple of those at the quarterback position, in the defensive backfield. I think there's some things that they have to discuss when it comes to inside linebacker. We're going to tackle all those topics in our Titletown Topics. We'll bring in Keith Rording from PackerReport.com, as well as our special guest, a man who quarterbacked both the Badgers and the Packers. Stick around. Much more to come here on Fox 55's Green and Gold Gridiron. Welcome back to Fox 55's Green and Gold Gridiron. We're at Scotty's in Schofield. I'm Brian Groff. We've already met Bill Ferrario, sitting to my left, Keith Rording from PackerReport.com, who should have been on an airplane to Arizona by now.
Man, that's what we start with, Brian. Yeah, I was supposed to be flying out to Arizona yesterday. You know, instead I got to watch the Pro Bowl this weekend, and am I the only one that saw Jordy Nelson catch a touchdown and saw John Kuhn convert a 4th and 1 and was not terribly excited? I mean, where was that last week, right?
Hey,
so
I'm just happy Keith shaved and he's smiling this week.
I'm less mopey. I'm less mopey this week, so I'm clean shaved. It's coming back.
That's good. That's good to see. Time for us to introduce our special guest, a 6th-round pick by the Packers out of the University of Wisconsin in 1984. In 86, he started all 16 games with the Green Bay Packers as well as parts of 4 other seasons. Following his playing career, he did some radio covering the Badgers and also ESPN covering Big Ten college football. He is an owner and instructor with Jeff Trickey, Randy Wright quarterback receivers camps. It is Randy Wright himself, Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So we like to talk about the former Badgers who played for the Packers, and Bill and Randy, you're part of a select group. So going back to, there's a nice high five on that. Going back to when you joined Green Bay, you're a group of just 2 of 12 who played at UW and then played for the Packers. It's a pretty select group.
You know, when I was playing at Wisconsin, I had never been in Wisconsin until I went to school here, and had never been north of Madison until I was going into the NFL Combine and the draft, and I had to come up to Green Bay to get my physical. And I remember going north of Madison the first time thinking, man, this is like Canada. And it was way north. And then obviously you spent 35 years in Wisconsin and grew to love it. And I think even after I got done playing with the Packers, you start to realize and appreciate more the bond playing for Wisconsin than playing for Green Bay. And the state of Wisconsin has been really special and has even grown to be more so since I've retired.
Did you feel extra pressure coming in? Bill has talked about this coming in, knowing that fans around here knew who you were. They knew the nice career that you had with the Badgers, and now you're coming in and trying to make a name for yourself at that next level.
I really didn't. And at the time that I was drafted by Green Bay in 1984, I had been the first Badger drafted by the Packers in over 20 years. So I think there was probably a little more attention to that at that point, but I loved playing in Wisconsin. The fans have always been very good, and I didn't feel near as much pressure as I did support. So that probably made it easier to some degree. Playing quarterback in the NFL was enough pressure. So the fact you were playing here or somewhere else didn't really make it more pressure. I think it was more support.
And Randy, now you've kind of come full circle. You did the broadcasting route, certainly with ESPN doing the Badger games and working with the Big Ten, and now you're working with the camps. That was something that your son Nate really got you into, right? That was kind of your first exposure.
It is. I got done playing for the Badgers or for the Packers and went into broadcasting the Badger games for 3 years and broadcast the Rose Bowl in '93. And then I went to ESPN for a little over 12 years, 13 years. And when my son got into playing high school ball, I had been with ESPN, like I said, 12 years, and I took a 2-year leave from ESPN to watch him play. He didn't start playing football till his junior year in high school. So he's quarterback, and worked with him, and I took that leave to watch him play. And I fell in love with the high school athlete again. And after playing in college and playing in the pros and broadcasting all Big Ten games, I really fell in love with the high school athlete. So he finished his high school days and went to college, and I started coaching high school ball and coached for 5 years, loved it, was absolutely a passion that I had. And then I had an opportunity. We had a business in Madison for 20 years. We sold that, and I had an opportunity to join Jeff Trickey, who had started quarterback camps. This is going on our 28th year as a company.
And your son went to the camp, right? That was your first exposure.
Exactly. He went to the camps, and that's how I met Jeff Trickey. And Jeff is older. He's 66 now and looking to step down. So we wound up getting involved about 5 years ago. So I stepped down from coaching and started running the camps. And now we have 45 camps in 22 different states. And we'll have about 3,300 kids a year between quarterbacks and receivers that come to the camps. And it's absolutely fabulous.
From time to time, the Packers had played preseason games at Camp Randall Stadium. But the first time they ever did it, you were there, 1986. And at the time, it was the largest crowd to ever see a Packers football game. So almost 75,000 people were at Camp Randall.
You know what it was? It was a great experience for me. But not only did I get to go back and play in that game, and like you said, it was the first time they'd done that, but we played the Jets, and Al Toon was on the Jets team, who was a teammate of mine in Madison and obviously an all-pro for the Jets. So that was real special for both of us to be able to go back and play again in Camp Randall.
So I guess, Randy, with everything you're doing with these young kids, this is something that's so new now with coaching up the high school athlete, and I know you're splitting time between Madison and Phoenix, and you talked about how it's really become this year-round thing. What is something that you can pass on to high school kids of this age that are just looking to soak up that knowledge that maybe you didn't know when you were at that age, that you didn't have somebody to tell you?
Well, the game has gotten so specialized by position at an earlier age. And we were talking a little bit before, Wisconsin, the WIAA rules are coaches can only have contact with your athletes for 5 days from when the season ends until the season begins. So from the last football game until August practice starts, there's only 5 contact days that you can have in the state of Wisconsin. So the athletes here, they want to play in other sports, which is fabulous. In Arizona, where I live for 6 months of the year and I train down there, there are no rules. They have football 365 days. They're always out. When I go back and train with athletes back there, we're on the field throwing 7-on-7 last week. Wow. So it's different in each state that you go to. But I think one of the things that I found in working with the athletes, especially in the upper Midwest, is so many of the athletes think that if they don't complete every pass, they're never going to make it into the NFL. And they think, well, if I'm not 6'5" and I'm not a 4.40 guy, then I'm not going to make it. We just had a camp the other day in Menominee High School. We have winter camps that we do inside, and we limit the numbers because we're limited with space. But we had 50 athletes at it, 56 athletes, 28 quarterbacks, 28 receivers. And Luke Swan is one of our coaches that runs our receiver side of it while I run our quarterback side. And Luke and I were both there. And to be able to talk to the athletes about, neither of us ever made it to that level because of our athletic ability. There's so much else and so many other things that happen that have to happen. And to be able to try and get through to the athlete that you got to believe in yourself, and you don't have to be 6'5", you don't have to be a 4.40 guy, but you do the little things right all the way, and you do all the things right along the way, and that's going to carry you a lot farther. And that's probably the thing that we can try and mentor them along that process more than anything else.
And you can see that quarterbacks are getting coached a lot more at an earlier age because guys are coming in and starting in the NFL their rookie year. You get guys like Andrew Luck who come in, Andy Dalton come in, and they're playing right away. So the whole Aaron Rodgers sits behind a quarterback for a couple of years, that's not common at all anymore.
Well, the money that they're paying these kids, the money they're paying these NFL rookies and second-year players is so high that you have to be able to come in and perform right away. And we say this a lot at our camps, and it's one of the reasons why we have, I think, so many attendees that attend our camps. The pressure, and you'll know this too from the college level, your college coaches used to coach your position. That doesn't happen a lot at the college level right now, especially at quarterbacks. I mean, those quarterback coaches and offensive coordinators at the college level, they're working on scheme. They're working on how to attack this defense. Who do we read? What plays? They're not taking the time of practice to say, this is how you throw the ball, this is your technique, this is your fundamental. So those guys need to learn that at a younger age. They need to learn it on their own. And there are some fabulous high school coaches out there. But there are also some that maybe don't specialize in the position of quarterback or the position of wide receiver. Bill may be a fantastic high school coach, in it for the right reasons, love the kids, and is a great role model, but he may not be able to coach quarterbacks on technique the same way I wouldn't be able to coach offensive linemen. So because those coaches at the college level can't focus so much on teaching them, they have to learn it at a younger age, and I think that's one reason we get so many kids at our camps.
That's some great information. We're going to turn our attention now toward our Titletown topics, and we're going to start out with Bill. And, of course, we've talked about how there's a lot of things that the Packers have to discuss and make decisions on moving into the offseason. So right now, they're in great shape with the salary cap. They're beginning the season they began at about $8 million below cap number of $133 million. It's supposed to go up between 5.5 to 8.8. As of right now, with the list of free agents, it looks to me like Randall Cobb and Brian Bulaga are up at the top. You can call them 1A and 1B. Do you think they can re-sign both of these guys? And who else would you put in that upper echelon as guys they have to bring back?
In my opinion, I think you have to. I say spend the money. Right now, I think we have a window for championship seasons with being in the prime of Rodgers' career. I think you have to spend the money. I think you have to keep both of those guys. The last thing I want to do is, I always talk about offensive line. We joke about it, but the last thing I want to do is break up that offensive line. We finally have them healthy. We finally have them playing almost a whole season together without injury. Keep Bulaga in there. I think that makes it a better offensive line. And Randall Cobb, I don't want to go – I want to have that dual threat of Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb. I don't want to lose Randall Cobb and put that much more pressure where they're doubling Jordy Nelson, and then we have to expect a young receiver to step up. Randall Cobb's established. We know what he could do. We know what he does for the team. I think you got to pay both those guys move forward.
Well, I think if Randall Cobb's gone, you got to replace two guys because you got to replace a punt returner in him, and then you got to replace a wide receiver. But you don't let somebody go until you have somebody to take their place. It's the same way in business. It's the same way on the athletic field. You don't let someone go without somebody there. And I would say it's probably going to be harder to replace Bulaga than it would be a Cobb, even though Cobb can fill more roles. But if you don't have somebody that you're ready to step in, then you need to pay them the money and get them back.
You know, all season long, Bill has been telling us that it starts up front. So I think keeping the cohesiveness of that offensive line together, even though you've got Donnie Barclay, you've got J.C. Treader, that could step into that starting role. I think, Bulaga, he missed all of 2012. He missed part of 2013. He's had a fantastic year. You definitely want to keep him. You want to keep that line together. You want to keep that singular unit. Then you've got Cobb. He's such a dynamic playmaker. He plays a couple roles. I think both guys fit into the draft and developed strategy of Thompson, and I definitely think there's going to be cap space to keep both of those guys, in part because of some of the guys that get let go, probably A.J. Hawk, probably Brad Jones, and quite possibly Tremont Williams, just because of the depth at cornerback with Casey Hayward and also Devon House.
And they're so young. Brian Bulaga's only 25, and he's been around for 5 seasons already. How about real quickly, following up on free agency, Tremont Williams and Devon House? It doesn't seem like they would both come back. Real quickly, which of the two would you keep? We'll start with Bill.
Maybe it's the offensive line in me, but I'm not huge fans of our defensive secondary right now. And like Randy said, you have to find somebody first before you let him go. But I know our front office is doing their due diligence, but I either want that extremely talented, hardworking guy out of college, or pay more money, go out there, get the 6'1", 6'2" corner that's going to be a shutdown corner, be physical, and be able to defend the pass and not be getting burnt deep on these deep balls.
If you're looking at between House and Williams, I take the veteran. One's got a lot more potential, younger. The other, Williams, he's done it. He's the older. I take Williams. He's the veteran who's proven it.
I think when you look at what Williams' price tag is going to be, and you look at that House is younger and more athletic, but he has missed a lot of games with injuries. There's a lot of unknown in that equation. But you also have Casey Hayward. They have Dimitri Goodson, who was a guy they drafted last year. They're real high on. So I don't know. I think you love to keep the veteran, but who knows? And Devon House was the only guy that could cover Julio Jones in that Falcons game. So he's got that going for him.
That's right. Believe it or not, that was just topic 1. So we're going to take a break. We'll come back, and we'll have topics 2 and 3 for you. Titletown Topics on Fox 55's Green and Gold Gridiron with former Packers and Badgers quarterback Randy Wright. Our topic number 2, Matt Flynn and Scott Tolzien, both unrestricted free agents. Is it time to draft the heir apparent to Aaron Rodgers, or is that man already on the roster?
That's a good question, and one I'm sure that they're going to address this season. I don't know that they feel the heir apparent is on their roster right now. That doesn't mean that they can't go out and get somebody else, but I don't know that Ted Thompson feels that either of those two are going to be the heir apparent, especially the path that Flynn has gone through and been beaten out by some others. And I think if a situation like Rodgers came up, if a great quarterback falls to the 24th pick or wherever the Packers are going to be picking, I think you take him. But I don't think you have to go out and reach this year for a guy that isn't a good fit. So I think they'll take him if he's there, but they're not going to reach for him.
I agree. I think, Flynn was a serviceable guy. He was a gamer. He knew the offense. He had that great comeback last year against Dallas. Tolzien's a guy that I feel like they gave him a chance. They liked his athleticism, his arm. But, again, he couldn't really do it either. So I don't know. I mean, is either of those guys an answer? Not long term, I don't think. So, yeah, I mean, the guy's out there somewhere, or maybe he's on somebody's roster already.
I agree. I like Randy's answer that I don't think you're drafting for a quarterback this year. If one's there and it's a good pick, I think that's Ted Thompson's motto, to get the best available player. I don't think Matt Flynn's going to be on the roster next year. I think Scott Tolzien will remain on the roster as the backup, but I'm not sure if today there is the next starter for the Green Bay Packers on the roster today, not saying that somebody can't evolve into one in the future.
Ted Thompson, in topic number 3, dipped into free agency when he brought in Julius Peppers. The cap number for him really jumps next year. It goes to $12 million. Do you see him coming back? I don't even know if this is something we debate, but where would you like to see him go get a free agent and plug in a hole next year?
I mean, Peppers turned 37, last week Sunday, so looked like he had a really good birthday present. Then he didn't, but I think you pay him. I mean, if there is a way to negotiate that number down, I think you do it. But he's still got gas left in the tank. And you know what? There's a lot of guys making money that seems disproportionate to what they should make. He's a guy, I think, based on what he's shown, you got to have him back next year if you're going to make another run. I think he's a key piece of the puzzle. You pay him, they're going to free up some money in other places. I don't know. It's not Ted Thompson's MO to go out and get guys. I mean, he gets a Charles Woodson or a Ryan Pickett in 1 year. Then we go, 8 years before he gets Peppers, and then LaTroy Guion, who's a guy they're working to re-up with. So I don't expect him to get somebody else, but I would love to see him pay Peppers.
I agree. I think we finally got that defense to 90% to where it needs to be, and I think 100% you have to pay Julius Peppers. You have to bring him back to keep that defense. As we talk about the offensive line, not wanting to break it up, on the defensive side, I think Julius Peppers was the glue that brought that defense together. He gave other players more ability to rush the passer, to help defend the run, and I just think you need Peppers on that defense if you want to have a successful defense in 2015.
Yeah, I agree with that train of thought. If Peppers is gone, Clay Matthews' production is likely to go down. So unless you're going to find somebody that's going to be as productive on the field for noticeably less money, you're going to affect two players when he's gone. Peppers is gone and Matthews' performance goes down just because teams focused on him like they did 2 years ago.
Until Peppers waved for Burnett to go down after that pick, it was a virtually flawless season.
I was waiting.
It's a blemish.
I was waiting for that from you, Keith.
I can't let it go.
We're going to take a break, and we're going to get real quickly into topic 4 and our last pick'em of the year because the Super Bowl is coming up. That's next. We're moving into fourth down territory. We're going to get to a fourth Titletown topic, and this one has to do with middle linebacker. Obviously, some issues this year. A.J. Hawk's playing time went away. Brad Jones wasn't consistent, and we're back to the front here with Bill. Are those two guys gone this offseason?
I think they are. I think that's going to be a key point that we're going to look at in the draft and also possibly in free agency. Even though Hawk's a fellow Big Ten guy, but he's an Ohio State guy, I like his leadership qualities. I like his smarts with football, but he's losing his steps. He's not out there. He's not able to cover guys as well as he used to. It's just not the type of linebacker that we want with this defense, with where we want to go. I think both those guys are going to be gone, and I think we're going to replace them through draft or free agency.
I think I agree with that. I think there's some strength at the other positions there. They can pick it up if you bring in a young guy, if you bring in a rookie, if you bring in a free agent, and I think the production that they got out of this position this year needs to improve.
Mm-hmm. You know, I love A.J. Hawk. I think he's got great intangibles, great leader, doesn't miss practice, doesn't miss games. But it's the tangibles where things are slipping a little. He was never a guy that could afford to lose a step, and clearly he has. He's been phased out a little. I think you need to cut him, whether or not they bring him back at a reduced salary. He understands the business side. Would he be comfortable in that role? I don't know. Brad Jones, as we've talked about, you know, he had the great special teams play against Seattle. He caused the fumble, but he probably has as many penalties as tackles this year, and he's clearly played himself out of Green Bay.
All right, so that does it for our Titletown topics. Time now for our final Fox 55 Pick'em of the year. We are down to the Super Bowl. You can see the standings right there. Bill, it's got to beat out the guests. So we'll see how this goes. Normally we pick all the way through. Jana already sent her pick in. Jana is going with the Seahawks, and we'll all go at the same time with our picks.
There's no way I'm picking the Seahawks.
So we have Seahawks at the end, and this is what we're playing for.
Now,
Robert Raff has told us
pick?
that we're playing for this. I went with the Patriots.
Why'd you do that,
You
Brian?
didn't see the backside.
Just so you can't lose?
Because
you got a one-game
lead.
lead?
Right side.
You got a one-game
Tom
lead?
Brady. So that's who I'm going with. Our thanks to Randy Wright. Thanks for joining us this
Absolutely,
evening.
guys. Thank you for having me. It's been great to be here.
Glad to have you. George Kuntz, an author, a Super Bowl champion, will be with us next week. It'll be our final show of the year. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thank you for watching Fox 55's Green and Gold Gridiron.